All right, so in the last video, we got a chance to touch on the basics of deductibles. And love them or hate them, they seem to be a necessary evil. But this time around, let's get to the second half of our Medicare deductible story and talk about how deductibles work with MediGap plans, Medicare Supplement plans, and Medicare Part D drug plan. This is Michael's Medicare, where we talk about all things Medicare, from plans to benefits to enrollment periods, extra help, prescription, drug coverage, MediGap, and the whole kit and caboodle that is Medicare. Before we get to it, please don't forget to like and subscribe, because it does help our channel to grow, but also because it'll means you'll get to stay up to date about the newest Medicare changes, the newest Medicare options, and ways to make more, better informed Medicare decisions. All right. Here we go. So for those of you who have not seen the last video about just deductibles for original Medicare, you should check it out. It gets into the nitty-gritty of Medicare deductibles for both Medicare Part A and Medicare Part B specifically. And if you want the full details, check out that video. But right now, let's do a real quick recap of Medicare deductibles for Part A and Part B so we can get to the Medicare Supplements and the Medicare Advantage and the Medicare Part D deductibles. Part A is the portion of original Medicare that covers hospitalization for Medicare beneficiaries. This means it will help to pay for those costs for things like spending the night in the hospital, or big surgeries, or skilled nursing care. It doesn't usually have a monthly cost, but it does have a cost that has to be paid when someone utilizes those Medicare Part A services. And part of the cost, and really the first cost that someone would have under Medicare Part A, is a $1,632 per benefit period deductible that covers the cost for the first 60 days in the hospital. Now for Medicare Part B, that is the portion that covers more day-to-day care under original Medicare. There is a much simpler one-time-a-year deductible of $240 in 2024, and that does go up, that the beneficiary would have to pay if they use services covered by Medicare Part B. Once that $240 deductible in 2024 is met, then Medicare will cover approximately, generally around 80% of the cost, while the beneficiary has to be responsible for 20% of the remaining cost generally. All right, so that is the basis for original Medicare and deductibles. And if you want to see the full video, check out that other video. But let's move on to another portion of Medicare that also has deductibles and can sort of be counterintuitive, which is under Medicare prescription drug plans, or PDPs, or Medicare Part D plans. It's got a lot of names, kind of like the former Yugoslavia over the last century or so. Now, Medicare prescription drug plans are additional insurance coverages that are provided by private health insurance companies. Some are the biggest companies that provide the services that we all know, and some are kind of smaller, more like boutique PDP plans. But the reason they exist is because Medicare, or original Medicare rather, doesn't provide coverage for prescription drugs that are prescribed by one's doctors. Now I know it seems like a pretty big thing to overlook, but they just didn't include it back in the day. I don't know. The Part D plans, though, will have an additional premium generally that has to be paid monthly, whether someone uses the drug benefits or not. And also, not for nothing, there is a pretty hefty penalty for not enrolling in a prescription drug plan when somebody first becomes eligible for Medicare if they don't have other credible coverage. That aside, Medicare Part D plans come in two varieties. That is the standalone version, or connected with a Medicare Part C plan or Medicare Advantage plan. Often these connected ones are called MEPDs, or Medicare Advantage Prescription Drug Plans. First, with the single standalone Part D plans, these plans will help beneficiaries to pay for their medications in various stages. And as you can guess, the first stage is the deductible stage. Standalone Medicare Part D plans are able to set their own prices and their own costs for medications, and can also change how much of a deductible there is on a plan. So with regards to standalone Medicare Part D plans, during the initial deductible stage, the beneficiary is going to be responsible to pay a maximum of $545 a year. That's in 2024. So what this means is that starting the first of the year, a beneficiary is going to have to pay all of the prescription drug costs 100% until they reach a maximum of $545 in 2024. But they don't always have to, because sometimes deductibles can be much lower than $545, and often is the case, depending on the plan that someone chooses, the deductible could even be $0 a year. That is actually not that uncommon. So they don't always have to have a deductible, which is often the case with a Medicare Part D that is attached to a Medicare Advantage plan. But of course, having a Medicare Advantage plan that has a Part D also comes with its own trade-offs. I guess the long and short of this is what I'm getting at here is that the Medicare Part D plan may have a deductible that has to be paid for the beneficiary in 2024 with a maximum of $545 for that deductible. or they may not. It just depends on the plan that somebody has, but it's the most that you could pay. Also important to note, and sort of a pitfall to look out for, is that when a PDP plan gets designed, they all basically have the same pool of money to pay for drugs and services and deductibles. So if there is a standalone plan that has a low monthly premium, but also has no deductible, that cash has to be recouped somewhere else and often is saved on the types and variety of available, specifically high dollar drugs. Inversely, expensive plans monthly may be costly and may have higher deductibles, but in my experience, they will often have more expensive brand name drugs in lower tiers or more availability to them. So just something to keep in mind if you are surveying that prescription drug landscape in your area. Now let's talk in specific about how deductibles work under Medicare Advantage plans, or MAPDs, or Medicare Part Cs, or Medicare Health Plans as they are sometimes called. Like the Medicare drug plans, they are also plans that are run by private insurance companies, but unlike original Medicare or unlike Medicare Part D plans, they are more like a traditional insurance plan that somebody would have had prior to being eligible for Medicare, with the biggest difference being that in order to be eligible for these plans, somebody has to have both Medicare Part A and Medicare Part B. Medicare Advantage plans in Southern California normally do not have a deductible at all for their HMO versions, with the exception of a few. And these deductibles usually are very small in comparison to an under 65-year-old plan, and oftentimes will include few benefits like annual checkups as well as primary care doctor's visits without actually having to pay that initial deductible. Also important to note is that for Medicare Advantage plans, the health deductibles for health services are separate from the Part D drug deductibles. If the Medicare Advantage plan also is a PDP, has a drug plan attached to it. That means that there could be two separate deductibles, one for the health side and one for the RX side. But in practice, again, the majority of plans in Southern California are not going to have really either of these deductibles. But again, it may vary from plan to plan. Check your local plans or talk to a professional. Now, last up for today, and probably the easiest to explain, is going to be the Medicare Supplement plans, because Medicare Supplement plans, which are also private insurance plans only accessible to those Medicare beneficiaries who have both Medicare Part A and Medicare Part B, really are add-ons to original Medicare, meaning that they primarily work to fill in the gaps, hence MediGap, that Medicare doesn't cover. This can include that Medicare Part A deductible of $1,632 per benefit period we talked about earlier and also in the previous video. But in the modern times, in 2024 and beyond, it will not cover Medicare Part B deductibles or that $240 like it would back in the day, in the halcyon days of the Medicare Supplement Plan Cs and Plan S, which are no longer available. Back then it would, but nowadays none of them cover all of the Medicare Part B $240 annual deductible for that's left for the beneficiary to pay. So yeah, I don't know. Just write your congressperson and maybe they can bring it back. All right, so that is going to be it for the two-part series on Medicare deductibles. And if you have questions about your Medicare deductibles, or with original Medicare Part A and Part B, or Part C, or Medicare or Medicare Advantage, or prescription drug plans, or really any questions about your Medicare coverage, feel free to reach out to us at the information down below, or check out our other great Medicare content. We have new stuff coming out on the YouTube and Instagram on a weekly basis for Medicare. And of course, don't forget to like and subscribe and follow so you can get notified when our newest videos come out. So for Michael's Medicare, I'm Michael. Hoping that you have a great rest of your day, and goodbye.